1807, slavery was abolished in the British Empire. Yet today, over 200 years after the slave trade ended, millions of men, women, and children are bought and sold in the underground global slave trade. This is human trafficking.
Have you ever heard of human trafficking?
About trafficking?
Human trafficking. Have you ever heard that term?
Oh yes, I heard about that, yeah. You talk about slave?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I know a lot about the Mexican-American border and human trafficking there. I've done international migration courses, so I know that it's a global problem, but I'm not sure about it in the Canadian setting, really.
Do you know anything about human trafficking?
No, I don't know much about it at all. I know that it does take place in Canada and the States, and it's kind of a new issue, but I don't really know much.
Just selling of people or taking people away from where they're supposed to be, I think, and I don't really know too much about it.
Well, it's slavery basically, right?
According to the United Nations, human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harbor, or receipt of persons by threat, force, coercion, abduction, fraud, or deception. It is the abuse of power over a position of vulnerability by giving or receiving payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person. It is to have control over another person for the purpose of sexual exploitation, including prostitution, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. United Nations tallies suggest that there are 2.5 million people worldwide, including some 1.2 million children, involved in forced labor through global trafficking. Human beings are the third largest illegally trafficked product after drugs and weapons, making it a $5 to $9 billion a year industry. People are a highly valued commodity in the black market because of the high profits available to those involved in the modern slave trade. The majority of people being trafficked are women and children, primarily for the sex trade, and affects all nations and all people.
Oh, I know a lot about prostitution, like in France. A lot of girls come from Africa, and but I never heard about that in Canada.
I guess increased security is increasing the amount of human trafficking. More people want to cross borders, and increased security has made that harder, so people are more likely to engage in it, I suppose.
I'd say a lot of Asian countries and maybe some Middle Eastern countries, maybe even down South America. I'm not sure though.
I mean, not so much. Maybe not so much in Canada anyway. I know there's trafficking of North Korean women into China and things like that. But
not a Canadian, no. I don't think so.
I think of more like third world countries it happens to, and maybe like younger women.
The RCMP believe 800 to 1,200 people in Canada have been victims of human trafficking, but some activists peg the figure as high as 15,000. The RCMP encounters cases of women from across Canada, many from poorer communities and a majority of them First Nations women and girls, who leave their homes and enter the sex trade in urban areas. Most were lured in by a boyfriend as a means of support or the promise of a good job in a big city. The RCMP has also noted several cases where Canadian girls have been taken abroad and sold. Internationally, Canada is considered a source, transportation, and destination country for victims of human trafficking. This means that men, women, and children are being trafficked from and through Canada to countries like the United States. This also means that thousands of people are being trafficked into Canada for the purposes of forced labor and for the sex trade.
what they say are the first charges under Canada's new
Since the first case of human trafficking appeared in the news in 1986, several cases of human trafficking have surfaced in the news media, each story more chilling than the last.
And protect victims of human trafficking.
Other people arrested Thursday night in a series of raids on Vancouver area massage parlors. Most of those arrested were women.
Police say anonymous tips led them to a married couple whose nanny was working under slave-like conditions.
Have you heard of any cases happening in Canada that this has happened?
Nothing specifically, but I've heard of them. I've heard like brief spurts on it in the news, and that's about it.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I mean, you have, I don't know so much in Canada, but you have boatloads of, Chinese immigrants and stuff that try to come into the country, and they find them 60 dead in a, tractor trailer somewhere and things like that.
For the sex trade within Canada, I'm not aware of it at all.
In 2005, the government passed Bill C-49 that amended the criminal code to identify human trafficking as a crime. This included withholding or destroying of identification, immigration, or travel documents to facilitate trafficking in persons. Yet to date, only 2 people have been charged under this law. Bill C-49 was to be used in combination with Section 118 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, which targets cross-border trafficking in persons. Section 118 of the IRPA defines the offense of trafficking as knowingly organizing one or more persons to come into Canada by means of abduction, fraud, deception, or the use of force or coercion. As of July 2007, no one has been charged under this section. What can you do to become a modern-day abolitionist? Learn as much as you can about human trafficking and spread the word. Contact your Member of Parliament and Senator about human trafficking. You can find out more information by visiting www.formycanada.ca.